In today's video, we're doing a photo shoot using ultraviolet light. Now, the beauty about this photo shoot is that it's super simple, yet the results look really interesting and different from anything else. So UV light is a little bit different because certain things glow when you shine ultraviolet light on them, and you can end up with some really interesting concepts and ideas and photos. So what will you need for this photo shoot? Let's start off with the obvious. You will need some ultraviolet lights. Now, I have these two light bulbs here just because I did a photo shoot like this a couple of years back. But light bulbs for this photo shoot actually are not the best option because they scatter the light all over the place. That's why I have this janky ass softbox that I made myself. In retrospect, I would say that you're better off going to Amazon and just buying something like an ultraviolet light flashlight or stuff like that. I will leave some links down in the description. It's just going to be a lot easier to work with those things. For this photo shoot, we're going to use some regular markers. These things glow really well under ultraviolet light. If you don't want to use markers, you can just go on Amazon and there's UV makeup. Things work perfectly fine as well. I'm going to show you how to use these things. Now, in terms of camera gear, the UV light is pretty dark, so you're going to need something that performs well in low light. So for the lens, I'm going to use an 85mm f1.4 from Samyang. We're going to be shooting indoors in this studio, and it's going to be a little bit crammed with 85mm, but we'll make it work. And in terms of the camera body, I'm going to use the Sony a7 III. Preparing for the photo shoot is super simple. What we got here is just a plastic bottle cap and some pliers. So what we're going to do is we're going to break open these things and squeeze out the ink. Alright, so we got out the stem of the marker. So just pull it out. You're going to take the stem and just squeeze out from inside the ink. There we go. Probably paper towels is a good idea. This stuff really glows under UV light. Next up, we're going to use a old toothbrush to get this splattering effect on Cynthia. So what we're going to do is we're just going to dip it in and then just apply it. And also, it really doesn't take a lot of this stuff to get the coat. As you can see, it shines like crazy. UV light off. You can't even see the marker when you turn it on. Boom. Looks awesome. So Cynthia got her first coat on and it's looking really good. The only thing with these things is with the markers is that these things don't smell so good. So if you're planning to do this, just go out and get the proper UV makeup. You can buy it on Amazon. It's not that expensive. This is sort of a cheap alternative, but you're cutting a lot of corners and it's smelly. Alright, so let's take a look at the photos that we got. Alright, the first couple of shots that we got, we have Cynthia over here. She's right next to a plant. I wanted to add the plant in the shot just for a little bit of depth, but it wasn't really working out. We were just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and these shots weren't really working. I tried to edit these photos, but yeah, the first couple of shots, not my favorite ones, but we got some absolute awesome photos coming up after this. So next couple of photos, we were still trying to make the plant work and just, you know, have that depth from the plant leaves. It wasn't working out. I didn't even bother editing these shots. So next up, what we did was these shots, one of my favorite shots that we got. I saw these photos, similar photos like this, a couple of years back on Instagram, and I wanted to recreate these things. So basically what we got is Cynthia's hands, and she's got the ink sprayed all over her hands. In the background, what we have is a real fluffy floor mat, and then we have our phone, my phone on top of it, with the flashlight on, sort of as a backlight. And this really worked out and it looks really, really good. I went for the teal and orange color scheme and it really worked out. As you can see before and after, the difference is huge. The hardest part about editing these photos is probably getting the correct skin tones, because when you're using a UV light, it casts a lot of blue light on your subject. And the problem with that is if you want to get realistic skin tones, it's a lot of work. So basically my advice for you would be spend a lot of time in the color grading section in Lightroom. That's what's going to help you get the proper looking skin tones. You can try to do that with selective color, but I couldn't make it work. I found that color grading is by far the best option to get the skin tones to look good for these kind of shots. All right, next shot. Cynthia is laying on her back, and what we did, we used the same floor mat. We used it as a backdrop. We took some fairy lights, just scattered them around Cynthia, and we've got Cynthia to extend her arms. So this gives a lot of depth to the photo. I was shooting at 85 millimeters f1.4, so super shallow depth of field, and it was hard to get the hands properly focused at f1.4, but we got a couple of these shots, and these photos look absolutely amazing. One of my favorite shots from this photo shoot. I'm going to say that about every single shot. These shots really suffer if you add any clarity and texture to them, but if you want to add clarity and texture to these shots, you need to do that selectively. So if you want to increase clarity, I would avoid increasing it on the face, but here with Cynthia's hands, it really works out. Next up, we have the same shot, but Cynthia's holding a camera. And these photos just work out really well, and I guess it's just because we had to give the photo a bit more depth. So when Cynthia is holding the camera, we have, you know, the background a bit blurrier because the focus area is falling closer to the lens. Because if we have Cynthia in focus, pretty much the whole backdrop is also in focus, so that's not really working out. But yeah, the shots with the camera, not my favorite ones. They look alright, they look interesting. But let's move on to the next shots that we got. We tried to get some photos with bubbles, but it was just a pain. It wasn't working out as well. It was a lot of work, and the photos didn't really look too good, so we just stopped the effort because it wasn't really paying off. And from there, we kind of stumbled across this last idea. We actually tried to do something else, and it didn't work out. We wanted to make the bubbles glow in ultraviolet light. So what we did, we added a bit of that ink to the bubble mix, but once we did that, we couldn't get any bubbles, so it wasn't working out. So we ended up having Cynthia sitting here in the corner with the plant in the background, and with this edit, I really feel like the shot has some sort of mood going for it. I feel like this shot really works just because how messy it is. When you look at it, you know, there's a weird blanket on the ground. You have the UV light on a chair right next to Cynthia, that's in the shot. You have, you know, a broken outlet in the wall. Somehow all of these things just really work together, and it kind of makes this sort of mood for this shot. When I was taking these photos, I didn't think they will work out, so we tried to move stuff around just to kind of isolate Cynthia more, and we added the same fluffy floor mats for Cynthia to sit on, and then it just sort of took the whole mood away. It just doesn't look the same. It still looks good, I still like the shots, how they came out. You know, having the UV light and just having the shot so messy really kind of added a lot of mood to it, so that's what I enjoyed as well. Also, you probably noticed that these shots were taken with the 18mm f2.8 Samyang lens. And then lastly, we popped back on the 85mm, and these shots came out nice as well. You know, 85mm lens shots always look good. And that's pretty much it. That's all the shots that we got. It's only like 3 or 4 different shots that we got, but we were experimenting, and it just takes a lot of time, you know, and trial and error to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So if you're trying to do this photo shoot, here's my advice. Make sure you have a properly fast lens, like at least f1.8. Faster would be awesome. Make sure that you have different lighting to use as pack lights and just fill lights and stuff like that. Anything works, like fairy lights work. You don't have to have like these sort of lights, you know, for these photo shoots, because you're shooting in really low light, so just fairy lights will work perfectly. You know, your phone, we had a salt lamp, we used that as well. All of these things really work out. Just think about lights and how you can add some ambient lighting to your shots and just, you know, fill the shot with different lighting. Right, and on that note, if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more stuff like this, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.